everyone. So I got a question from somebody asking if I can go into more detail on all of the containers that I use in my garden. So that is exactly what I'm going to be doing today. And I feel like this is the perfect time because it's not so cold that I feel miserable being outside, but there's nothing really growing in the beds yet, so it's really easy to see them. So I'm gonna go over today every single container. I did a video similar last spring, but I have even more containers than I did then. Also, the longer I'm using the different containers I have, the more things I learn about them. And maybe my opinion has changed about some of these over time. So in general, what I'm using for my deck garden is elevated beds slash raised beds. I find it is more helpful to search for elevated beds because those typically always have bottoms on them. And if you are growing in containers and you don't have any soil to plant into underneath those containers, you want to make sure there is a bottom. So the elevated slash raised beds, I have different sizes of grow bags. So I'll go over those and the brands that I have. And then I have just like a wide variety of smaller pots. So plastic pots, terracotta. I have some like window boxes. So I'll go over everything. I also want to talk about some of the size of pots that I'm using for my perennials, because that might be helpful to you as well. So that is the plan. Now, as far as longevity of these different containers, I've really only been gardening since 2019. That's when I first got some of these containers that I will be showing you. So this will be the 5th year, right? 2019, 2021, 2, 3, yes. 5th year for some of these. So everything that I have is either 5 years old or less. So I can't say longevity more than 5 years for some of these containers. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and we will head outside. I'll kind of go over each of the containers in categories. So I'll start with my elevated slash raised bed since those are the largest container, and we'll work our way through. And if there's any questions that you have by the end of this, let me know down below and I will answer those. But let's go ahead and we'll start out on the front deck. First of all, can you hear the birds chirping? I absolutely love that. It feels like it's been so long since I've heard that, and then just in the last few weeks, we really have started to hear the birds more and more, but that's not what this video is about. This video is about my containers. So I'm gonna start with all of my raised slash elevated beds. I'm probably just gonna call them raised beds for the rest of this video. But all 4 of these on my deck are from the brand Gronomics. They are all made of cedar, which I just learned in the horticulture class that I'm taking. That is a wood that is naturally resistant to rot, which is great for planting in. So that's probably why they chose cedar to make their raised beds out of. Now this shortest one right here in the back, I've had the longest. So I've had that since 2019. I think this center one I got in 2020. The one back there is 2021. And this one is also 2020. So I've had each of these for a varying number of years, but I leave them outside all winter and I don't do anything else. I know I've talked a little bit about this in my, I think, garden tour, but I'm just gonna go a bit more in depth about these today. This raised bed in the center is my largest, and this one is 34 inches wide by 48 inches long and 32 inches tall. I love having this in the center. I probably only would have room for one of these just because they are so wide, that any other ones I put against the wall would make my walking spaces too narrow. But I do like having one bed that is this size. It also seems to work out the best for my bulbs compared to the smaller pots where they can rot with too much water. So I love having this bed in the center here. And then I have these two, which are identical, and these are still 48 inches long, so the same as the raised bed. They are only 24 inches wide though, and they're also 32 inches tall. So same length, same height as the center raised bed, and just a little bit narrower. And then over here, this one is my smallest, so it is only 18 inches wide, still 48 inches long, and 21 inches tall. Now, I think I mentioned this in my March tour video, but I do like having the varying heights. So the taller ones are great because I don't have to bend over to do any work. The downside is when things get too tall. So I planted giant zinnias in the center bed 2 years ago, they can be really impacted by the wind. So growing above the wall means that they could potentially suffer more wind damage, whereas if I'm planting like I did with my sunflowers in this bed, I have a much easier time managing those taller plants. But yeah, these are all of the raised beds that I use on the front. Again, all Gronomics. These 3 I got from their website. I got them, I tried to time it so that there was a sale happening. So I think I got them around like either Black Friday or Labor Day sales. I think the center one was in the $300 range. The 2 in the back were in the $200 range. This one I got from Home Depot. So Home Depot, and I'm sure other retailers carry this brand as well. This one I think was high 100s, just because it is the smallest of all of the raised beds. Now, as far as the depth, you have about a foot, because there are wooden slats on the bottom, but about a foot of depth for growing space. So do keep that in mind when you are deciding which containers to get. So we get just about a foot of growing space. Let me see if this one is the same, or are you a bit smaller? Yeah, you get about probably 10 to 11 inches in this one. Again, there is wooden slats that take up some space in the bottom. We are on the back deck now, where I have the final 3 of my raised beds. Now, these are not from Gronomics, and I think if I can remember, the reason is I knew I wanted shorter beds here, again, because I want to grow some taller flowers, and I didn't want them to be too tall above the wall, but I couldn't find the original shorter bed from Gronomics online. I think I can now, so I don't know what was happening then, but I actually think these look really nice, especially the way that the boards here are vertical. I think that helps kind of flow into the deck. So I'm really happy with these. These are the brand Wood Country. So that is the brand of it, like Gronomics is the brand that makes the beds out front. But I got these 2 from the Charming Bench Company. And then I got this one over here from Hay Needle, I think because the price was lower when I was looking at them. So I got these 2 first, knew I wanted to add a third, and the price was lower. So I went ahead and got all 3 of these over the last year. And I think, again, each of these were about in the $200 range. They're all, again, made from cedar wood. And then the size of all of these is 50 long. So they are a little bit longer than the ones out front. They are 20 inches deep, and then 20 inches wide. So back there, and then 20 inches deep. So the raised beds are definitely my favorite container that I have. A few different reasons. One, they obviously give me the largest amount of growing space, so I can fit a lot in them. Downside is being that they are the most expensive, obviously, compared to especially grow bags, but just the other regular pots as well. But I can't imagine having my garden without them, because they really give my garden structure, not only with the varying heights, but it would just seem weird to me, I feel like, to have like 50 pots all the same height. I like the visual interest that the different heights, sizes that these containers bring to my garden. So I really do love them. Like I said, I got them kind of year over year. Getting them all at once can be a much larger investment, so I kind of tried to pace myself out and wait for sales. I think I'm all set though. I don't think I want any more. Famous last words, I had like 5 more, but I don't know where I would put them. But these work really well, and again, kind of add that structure to my garden, and then I kind of fit everything else in my garden around it. It's also the most like show-stopping part of my garden, I feel like, and I think they look pretty. So yeah, those are my raised beds. Next, let's go talk about the grow bags. Now, the only 3 grow bags that I have outside are these 3 right here. All of the rest I empty out and store inside for the winter, but these are too large for me to move, barely, and I don't feel like emptying them out. I have no idea where I would store the soil. So these, just like my raised beds, stay out all winter. I got these in 2019, so they've stayed out for that many winters, and they are still holding up just fine. Like I mentioned, each of these are 30 gallons. I tend to use them for larger plants that need more space. So tomatoes, I actually had 2 tomatoes in one of these last year. The giant zinnias, I moved from this bed in the center to these last year, and it worked out much, much better. I just found these on Amazon. The brand, and I'll link everything that I'm mentioning below, but the brand is Garden Forever. And yeah, for overwintering, for 4 winters, I think they look pretty good. I'll talk about this in a second, but also wanted to mention these handles have held up really well on these bags. I don't move them too much because, again, I can't really move them on my own, but I did, thanks to Holly who left a comment, I did have my husband come up and help me scooch them over just for now until I plant them, so that I can let the space where they were sitting dry up, just to make sure that, I mean, maybe this wood will rot over time with my garden, but kind of slowing down that process as much as possible. So my plan going forward is I will have my husband help me do this in the fall. Once these are empty, I'll scooch them over so that they can spend the winter in a different part of the deck before I move them back here for the growing season. But let me grab my tape measure and we'll check out the size of these. All right, so these are just about 2 feet wide. And let's look at the depth here. So these are 16 inches deep, so similar to the raised beds on the back, which were 17 inches. So this and then the back raised beds give me the most depth when I'm planting. Now the only other brand of grow bag that I have is this grow bag, which is from, I think it was Vivo Sun, which sells a lot of gardening products on Amazon. So that's where I got these from. This one is 5 gallons. I also have 7 and 10 gallons, but I find myself, so I think I started using these in 2020, I think. And I found myself over the years gravitating more and more towards a 7 gallon. 5 was just a little bit too small. 10, even though larger sizes typically work better for a lot of my plants, 10 kind of took up a little bit too much space, and a lot of my plants seem happy in the 7 gallon. 7 gallon is what I use for all of my dahlias as well. Some things I have noticed with these is that although this one has its handles, the handles on these have torn off compared to my Garden Forever, the 30 gallon bags I just showed you. However, again, I don't use those as much, the handles as much, because I'm not moving them around. These are obviously really easy to move. Like I said, I empty them out and bring them inside for winter. So they're all in my closet right now. This one, I'm trying to see if we actually use this one. It does look like it has a little bit of wear and tear on it. One of the downsides of using the beige bags is that they show stain really easily. So I have noticed that. I liked the lighter color because I feel like having a bunch of black pots kind of like added too much like shadow to my garden, if that makes sense. It might just be weird and not make sense at all. Also, the beige kind of went with all of my wooden garden beds. But now I don't know if I care as much. I think I'm gonna use some more black bags just because, again, you can't see the stain on them, especially throughout the garden season. But again, this one looks pretty good. I'm probably gonna try out some new brands this year and kind of just see how it goes. But yeah, I find myself gravitating towards the 7 gallon grow bags. So I'm probably gonna stick to that size going forward for my smaller bags. And then I really have the large 30 gallon ones. Oh, also, benefit of grow bags is the price. So I think when they usually come in packs, they don't usually come just with one grow bag. And I think the 30 gallon grow bags averaged out to like $5 to $7 per bag. And then the smaller ones are like maybe $3 to $4 per bag. So it's definitely the cheapest way to garden. It also works really well for aerating your plants because they're very porous. Like the material, water just kind of flows through it. So that could be a benefit or something negative depending on what your garden environment is like. So we tend to get a lot of water, or a lot of rainwater in the spring when it's really cold outside. We get a fair amount of rain kind of during the rest of the season as well. But in my garden, I've lost more plants to too much water from Mother Nature rather than too little. So I like having containers that are a bit more porous, especially for plants that like well-draining soil. That has worked really well for me. But if you live in a very dry climate, then you might not want to use grow bags because they don't hold water as well. So all of the things that you have to think about depending on your garden environment. But I think that is everything about grow bags. Next, I will just kind of take you around all the rest of my containers. Actually, before I take you back out, let me go over the different materials for the other containers that I have and kind of the pros and cons of each of them. So I have plastic pots, I have terracotta pots, and then I have just other like ceramic pots. I also have a metal container as well that I have my strawberries in. And I've kind of found over the years things I like and don't like about certain materials when it comes to the pots in my garden. So My favorite looking pot is definitely terracotta. So I use that for all of my herbs. I use it for more like decorative flowers. I just really like the look of terracotta, but I can't store it outside over winter, which means I have to bring it inside and store it over winter. And I'll show you where all of my terracotta pots are in just a second. But that is something where if you live in a colder climate, you want to think about, do I have to bring my pots in so that they don't crack? Or can I leave them outside? And if you have space to bring them inside, great. If you don't, you might want to get plastic instead, because with plastic pots, I can pretty much leave them outside and nothing bad happens to them. So in my garden, what I think I'm going to start transitioning to is more plastic pots for my perennials that need to stay outside. I think I have all of my perennials in plastic pots, except for my blueberries, which are into very beautiful ceramic pots from Gethsemane Garden here in Chicago, I think is where I got them from. But I get so nervous every winter that they're gonna crack, so I do put burlap over them. I push them against the wall here for protection, but I'm always nervous that they're going to be damaged by leaving them outside. Also, they are heavier. So if I have to move them around, I just put one of them on wheels. But that's something else I need to keep in mind. Plastic is really easy to move around. My 2 raspberry plants are in plastic pots that are, I think, about the same size as the ceramic pots for my blueberries, and I can pick those up and move them wherever they need to go. I've even picked them up, carried them through the house, take them to the garden on the back deck. So something else to think about, moving all of your pots around. Plastic, I think, is gonna be the way to go for me for my perennials, and I'm gonna stick to my prettier pots for annuals that I can then empty out and bring those inside. Also, like I mentioned before, how grow bags drain very easily. Terracotta is also more porous, as long as it's not like sealed or glazed. So if you're just using like regular terracotta, those will dry out faster. The ceramic pots that I used, those are glazed, so they're not as porous, so they do retain water a bit better. And then plastic also retains moisture really well. So if you want something that holds a bit more moisture and you don't have to water as often, go for a plastic pot. So all of the things that you can think about when it comes to the containers in your garden. So now let me take you outside. I will show you the containers that have my perennials, because that's basically, I think, the only things that are outside. And I'll also show you where I'm storing all of my terracotta pots, which actually look kind of pretty. So we'll head out front first. So first off, I have my rose right here in a plastic pot, which I believe is 16-inch diameter. I'm hoping this comes back. This is my first overwinter experience with this rose, so we'll kind of see how it goes. But it's done really well so far in this plastic container. Also means, again, it's really easy to move around. I think I got this on Amazon. My plastic pots are either from Amazon or they are from Home Depot. If I can find it, I will look through my order history and I'll post it below. These are my 2 favorite pots, again from Gethsemane Garden Center. I just love the look of them. I love browns, neutrals when it comes to pots, because then I really feel like the plant itself shines. But like I said, these are really heavy. So this is the one I just put on wheels. I have to put this one on wheels. I think these are each 16-inch diameter pots as well. And I've had this one, I think, for 2 to 3 years. This one here I just planted last year, and this is also a dwarf variety, but they've so far done really well in these 2 pots. Then over here is my raspberry bush, the one that I cut all the way back, and it is the same size pot as my blueberries, but it's plastic, so really easy to move around as needed. I also have 3 more plastic pots over here, and these I all know are from Home Depot because I actually remember getting them. These 2 have my rhubarb in it. This will be my 3rd year for the rhubarb. That's done really well. And then I have this one for my aronia berry, which I also think I got 2 years ago. So this will be year 3 for this container. But yeah, definitely gravitating more towards plastic pots from now on for my perennials. On the back deck, this is the only perennial that I have out here, not in the greenhouse, but this is, I think this is actually an 18-inch pot that I got off of Amazon. I really like the look of it, and I think I'm gonna get more of this pot for my fruit trees, but also plastic, so very mobile. This is the one I carried through the house. And then, let's see. I have a few other empty containers outside, so these are my flower boxes. I like to use these for anything that I'm going to grow up a trellis, because then I can just like place the trellis down into the flower box, and it looks really pretty. I did Morning Glory last year, I think. And then just some other random plastic pots. And then here are all of my terracotta pots. So I just got this table. I've been hoping to hold off on like showing all the stuff I got for the room redesign for when it's all here, but that could still be months away. So this table I got from, I believe it was Anthropology, and one of the reasons I got it was for the storage ability underneath it. I like, especially with garden related things, to be able to store them in a way that looks pretty. And I think this is just a really pretty look. This is basically how it looks all through winter, just having all these pots out. And they're easy to grab if I'm, planting any houseplants in them. But I have a lot of terracotta. Some of them do have cracks on them, but that is okay. But I really love this look. And then when these are all outside, I think I'm gonna store my baskets under here. Might even like just throw some houseplants under here too and have them trailing over. Not sure yet, but a lot of ideas. So those are all of the containers that I have in my garden. I really like kind of where I'm at right now. I don't really think, again, there's any more room for raised beds, but we'll see. But I am really loving the structure that I've created, the garden that I've created up here. Something else I will add is that the larger number of smaller pots you have, the more watering it's gonna take. You're gonna have to be on it more regularly because they dry out. If you set up drip irrigation, you're gonna have to use a lot more emitters for the larger number of pots. So I am trying to go more towards a fewer number of larger containers, but I say that until I actually start planting and then just wanna put all of the plants about as possible. So we'll see how it ends up this year. But if you have any questions about any of these containers, let me know. I'll try to find as much information as I can and link all of that below. And if there's any other container types that you use that you really like, let me know that too. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.